Thank you for the opportunity to speak about my spiritual faith today. I am a Wiccan and a pagan, and I hope my presentation today will help you understand my faith and dispel any misunderstandings that exist in our society today. Before anything else, I need to state that Wicca is a very diverse religious practice with no central authority to govern it. Regardless of what I say today, there will be others who have a diverging opinion and viewpoint. The author, Margot Adler, said, "In Wicca, there is an exception to everything." And this is indeed true. And a common saying within Wicca is that getting people to agree to anything is like herding cats. In light of these statements, my comments today will focus on the middle of the road and mainstream descriptions of my faith. Wicca is both a modern religious practice and an ancient one. The religion of Wicca was created in the 1940s by Gerald Rousseau Gardner in Great Britain. Its inspiration was in Gardner's own experiences, Western esotericism, typified by the writing of authors such as Margaret Murray, Robert Graves, and James George Frazer, and the mythology of witchcraft in Europe. I say mythology because there is no historical evidence for the existence of any organized religion of Wicca. What did exist were individuals known as cunning men and wise women who fulfilled the roles of doctors and psychologists in ancient societies. These people were the victims, along with Jews, Gypsies, and Gnostic Christians, of severe persecution, known today as the Burning Times. Wicca is an ancient practice in that it offers a modern interpretation of historical paganism, albeit with heavy influences from Western esoteric groups such as Freemasonry and the Golden Dawn. Wicca is a pagan religion. What is that? Paganism is an umbrella term that describes many religious paths, from the oldest religious thoughts of man to today's modern society. Paganism flourishes and is considered the mother of all religions. All classical pre-Christian world religions were pagan. It refers to any religion that is not Abrahamic. Paganism has been broadly defined as anyone involved in any religious act, practice, or ceremony which is not Abrahamic. That would be Christian, Islam, or Jewish. The term comes from the Latin paganus. Paganus means country dweller or villager. It was a demeaning term like hick or redneck and lacked any religious significance. When Christianity first took hold in the larger Roman cities, and the rural peasants were the last to convert from their pagan religions. Paganism often includes pantheism, where God and the universe are the same thing. Panentheism, which means that God is part of everything. Polytheism, which is a belief in multiple gods, or that one God has multiple aspects. And animism, which is the belief that everything has a spirit attached to it. What is Wicca? While there are far more flavors of Wiccan practice than Baskin-Robbins ice cream, there are a few defining elements that the majority of practitioners would agree upon. Wicca is an initiatory practice. There's no trademark or authority over the term Wiccan. Anyone can self-identify as one. But from the traditional viewpoint, one must be initiated into the religion. This is because Wicca is a mystery tradition. A mystery tradition is a religious or spiritual tradition that emphasizes the pursuit of hidden knowledge or spiritual insight through the initiatory rites, rituals, and teachings. Think of a mystery tradition as an onion with several skins. The outermost layer being the simplest expression, which is taught to the masses, and each deeper layer, which is revealed through initiation, is the deeper and more complex understandings. Mystery traditions have existed in many cultures throughout history, and they continue to be practiced by people around the world today. Some well-known examples of mystery traditions include the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, the Eleusinian mysteries and of ancient Greece, and the Rosicrucian order. There are two primary ways to practice Wicca. The first is alone, which is known as being a solitary, and the second is to work with a group of people. The most common groups are covens and traditions. A coven is traditionally limited to 13 members and may or not be affiliated with a tradition. A tradition is much like a denomination in the Christian faith. A tradition will have its own distinct theology and practice. Traditions can either be eclectic or traditional. Traditional groups are based on the original structure created by Gerald Gardner and are known as British traditional Wicca. The practice of these groups remained consistent with little alterations since the 1940s. Eclectic groups, while often having a resemblance to traditional practice, can be very different. A good example is Dianic or feminist Wicca, which limits its membership to females and bases its worship on the goddess alone. What is God in Wicca? The definition of God is as varied as there are practitioners of Wicca. The traditional belief is that there is one unknowable and undefinable creative source. We are monists as opposed to monotheists. In monotheism, there is one God who is separate and distinct from its creation. In monism, the God and its creation are either the same or an aspect of the Creator remains in its creation. The Wiccan perspective on God follows the Hermetic model, in which God is unknowable, and the only way to understand it is through what comes from it, or its emanations. The first Hermetic emanation is that of duality, or the masculine and the feminine. In Wicca, this is viewed as the god and the goddess. As with human procreation, it is understood the interaction of this duality birthed the existence as we know it. Wiccans are also polytheists, or more accurately, polyentheists. Polytheists believe there are many gods and goddesses who are unique and individual, where polyentheists believe that all deities are aspects of one unknowable creator. Key elements of Wiccan practice. Wicca is a nature religion, not because we worship trees, but because we see the Creator existent in all things. Everything in this world is a part of the Creator. Therefore, we are a nature religion. Wicca is defined by its ritual practice. If you're sitting in a pew and listening to a sermon, you are not practicing Wicca. Wiccans are active participants in all religious observances. Wicca does not have churches. There are very few, if any, physical churches in Wicca. Wiccans create their own sacred space for worship, usually within a home, outside, or a rented space, if it's for a larger gathering. Part of this is due to the aversion for the collection of money and the use of paid clergy. There is no central authority for the religion. There is no organization or mother church that defines or dictates what Wicca is or is not. There are organizations of Wiccans who defend our rights and promote goodwill and understanding from the community at large. Wicca accepts all faiths as being equally valid, except when they say they're the one and only true way. And Wicca does not proselytize. We do not seek converts. Even in a religion as diverse as Wicca, there has to be some primary defining element of what constitutes this religion. And for me, it's the three pillars of Wicca: the Wiccan Rede, the Rule of Three, and a belief in reincarnation. The Wiccan Rede is our equivalent of the Ten Commandments, except that it is very simple. The Wiccan Rede in its short form is, "An it harm none, do as thou wilt," or do whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't bring harm to yourself or anyone else. The Rule of Three is a belief that what you put out into the world, either for good or for bad, will be returned to you threefold. If you live a good and virtuous life, that is what you will harvest. If you lead an indifferent and negative life, that will come back to you as well. And the belief in reincarnation. Reincarnation is generally a cornerstone of Wiccan belief, that we are placed here to grow spiritually, grow closer to God, and that we do that through multiple lifetimes where we have differing lessons that we're set here to learn. And that concludes my presentation, and the floor is open for any questions.
I have a question. What are some of the misconceptions of your faith?
Oh, there are plenty.
And I know you shared a few in your presentation, but maybe you can highlight maybe a few more, or you could just kind of share the ones that come to you.
One of the primary misconceptions is that we worship Satan. Nothing could be further from the truth. We do not believe in Satan or any all evil entity of any kind. Everyone and everything has good and bad within it, and it depends upon the individual as to how they're going to function in life. So a belief in Satan or somebody wearing the black hat is not part of what we do. Satan comes out of Christianity, and it is part of their pantheon. And generally, Wiccans do not utilize the Christian pantheon, although there is a subset of people out there called Christo-pagans or Christo-Wiccans that do. We recognize every faith and their pantheon, their God, saints, whatever is within their belief system, is just another source of energy and deity that can be utilized. So we often work with many different pantheons of gods and goddesses.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. And thank you for this presentation. I was definitely very unfamiliar with the Wiccan practice, and I am happy to learn. I'm a huge believer for myself that if I believe in the interfaith approach, that I should be willing to learn of others' belief systems, because all these things are present within this world. I see them as different paths to enlightenment. My question is, are there like regional gatherings or nationwide gatherings where the Wiccan community comes and assembles, or is it how is that orchestrated?
There are. They are generally called festivals, a pagan festival, and they occur all across the country. We used to have a really big one that occurred up in San Jose called PantheaCon. It wasn't specifically Wiccan, but it was all pagan faiths would come to that. We have what is called Pagan Pride Day, which occurs across the country. We have a very nice Pagan Pride celebration in Long Beach every year. And they occur all over the place. A lot of times they're not, large gatherings. It may be a camp out. There is one that occurs in Hemet, of all places, that is like a 4-day pagan camp out. So yes, there are gatherings.
Thank you, Gary.
I have a question, Gary. You said we use the word pagan for anything that's not Abrahamic, but what about like Buddhism, Hinduism, the non-Western faiths? Are they considered pagan?
Absolutely. Hinduism is absolutely a pagan faith. Now, if you talk to one of their clergy leaders, they might not say it's a pagan faith, but if scholars will tell you that if it's not Abrahamic, it is pagan in some sense.
That's interesting. I guess we tend to use pagan for anything that's not Western and not Abrahamic. Well, I don't know. I don't need to split hairs, but I'm just interested in the Wiccan point of view. Thank you.
Daniel.
Well, sign me up, Gary.
Well, you're welcome to come to one of our rituals.
You described almost exactly the aspects of Celtic Christianity, and especially in the aspect of panentheism. And I think this is where, when the Romans came to Ireland and the northern parts of Great Britain, they clashed with the early Christians because they were coming from a pagan practice and a pagan sensibility, and being in nature, no churches and all of that. So it's an extraordinary similarity to Celtic form of Christianity. But so much I've never heard so much in one sitting about Wiccan faith. So thank you, Gary.
No problem. I would say that the majority of Wiccan practice is heavily influenced by Celtic religion. But there are all different flavors, different traditions. There's Strega, which is Italian. There are Nordic Wiccan groups. One of the things within Wicca is The thought is to base your practice and your worship around the native spirits of your land, whatever gods inhabit where you live. And in the United States, that's a little difficult because we've imported everything from somewhere else. And we did have a Native American spirituality here, but it's considered bad form to appropriate Native practice within Wicca. Some people do, but the majority of people do not. So most of the things that we do have some Celtic background. Any other questions?
Gary, this is Scott here. Along those lines, I understand that a lot of things have been imported from other places in America, but have most of us had some kind of interaction with Wicca as far as symbols go, or traditions, or anything that's widely used in Wicca, or I don't know, is it something that we've seen before in the community?
It is fairly widespread in the community. Sometimes you may not recognize it because you're not familiar with the symbology. The primary symbol for Wicca is the pentagram, or the five-pointed star. That symbol goes back to antiquity as a religious symbol, and it was used by the early Christian church to symbolize the five wounds of Christ. I believe around the time of Nicene, that was dropped from Christian practice, but it was one of the early symbols that was used. There are many symbols. A lot of Celtic symbols are used within Wicca. The triple moon symbol, the waxing full and waning moon together, often represents the three phases of the goddess: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. There are many symbols that we use.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I believe Donna has her hand up.
Donna.
Yes, hi. Thank you for what you're presenting. I wondered if you could give just a brief overview, kind of what happens in a Wicca meeting or gathering.
Sure. This is typical. They can vary quite a bit. Usually we celebrate what we call the Wheel of the Year, and that is a series of rites or festivals that occur at different points during the year, and it's based on the agrarian calendar. So there are things that are done in the spring for planting. There's things that are done in the summer for growth. There's things that are done in the winter to survive the dark times and the cold and the snow. Generally, what we will do is we will hold a ritual, and a ritual is the creation of sacred space to hold a religious observance within. Since we don't have physical buildings, we have to create our own. Our churches are portable. Whether we go to the forest, we go to the beach, or we're in our living room, we can create a sacred space for our observances there. It involves cleansing the space, blessing the space, and holding our observance. Depending on what type of observance we are doing, what we do will change. If we are there are two types of things that we generally observe: the moons and the Sabbats. And the Sabbats are the major holidays or holy days, and they are generally based upon events of the wheel. And quite often they will be almost like a play where something is presented to explain what's going on within our theology. Moons, on the other hand, are the general working meetings of a coven. Healing work can be done there. Divinatory work can be done within a moon. If there's business that needs to be taken care of in the coven, handled then. But that's generally how we practice. And one of the most defining elements of Wiccan practice is everybody's involved. There's not a speaker at a podium. A well-designed ritual will have something for everybody to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have another one, Gary. Since Wiccans don't proselytize, where do new members come from?
Teachers will make themselves available. I have been teaching for almost 35 years now. It started out as strictly in person, and back in the day, we would go to local metaphysical shops, leave flyers, just to meet people out in the general community, and the word would spread that you're teaching, and people would come to you to be taught Wicca. Today, I have a meetup group, and my students now come from not only all over the United States, but all over the world as well. So a teacher can make himself available and say, I'm here, I'm teaching Wicca. But the first thing that I tell every student that comes into my classes is I'm not here to tell you that this is the right path for you. That is for you to decide. At any point that you decide that this is not the right path, I will wish you well and say goodbye. We don't try to keep people if they don't want to be here.
Thank you. And you said 13 is the maximum number.
In most covens, that's the traditional number because that's what Gerald Gardner started with. And within Gardnerian practice, which is the direct offshoot of Gerald Gardner, Gardnerian practice is made up of couples, both male and female. There has to be an equal number of male and female partners within a Gardnerian coven, and then there will be one person that's acknowledged as the leader of the coven. That gives 13. And the reason for male and female pairings is it's a reflection of the god and the goddess, that only with the combination of the male and the female do you have the entirety of what God is, because God is not an old white guy sitting on a throne up somewhere with big white beard like mine. It is everything, and it includes both the male and the female. And the fact that we work with the goddess is a very large draw to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that have grown up in patriarchal religions that say there's got to be more than this. I'm a woman and I'm not represented here. Anyone else? Well, if there's no further questions, I'll turn it back over to Gennaro. We've run over by a little bit, but I'm fine with that.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you to everybody that came today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Gary. One thing for sure, I have learned from what you have explained, and I'm sure everyone else has. If you'd like to stay longer, we're going to start our meeting. First thing we'll probably do is a short invocation. And what we like to do is do a short reflection and give you time to process the information Gary gave you. And then we'll start, and then we'll do some introductions if you don't mind. So I'll give everyone like a minute to do a short silent reflection. Center yourself in the ideal of learning, growing, and developing. And then we'll start at 1:41.